we have been talking about is factoring, right? And so we're going to go over kind of the next step in factoring. So what I mean by that is we kind of started off and we did factoring when we had two positive numbers that or positive terms that were being added together, and then we did factoring when we had a negative and a positive and a negative. And now we're in 5.9 or 5.9, which is kind of the I guess the most challenging of the factoring, I guess, if we want to say it that way. Okay, so let me pull my book up here in case we want to do something different. So we started talking about this on Monday in class, and I don't think we got very far. So I want to do the examples that are on the page, and then I want to do some more examples that are in the book. So we did lots of factoring, right? Lots and lots of factoring as I'm scrolling. Okay, so what makes 5.9 different than 5.8 and 5.7 is that we are we have this number that's out in front of our factors. So before, whenever we would do factoring, there we go. So before we just had m squared out front. So whenever I would say, okay, how are we going to factor this? It was easy because it was always m times m, right? But now we have, instead of just m squared, and we know it's m times m, now we have 6m squared. So there's more possibilities for how to factor these different expressions. So we're going to do the same exact process that we did before, where we have our terms and we're going to kind of try to figure out, okay, what should go first and what should go last in our FOIL, and then kind of see what makes the outside inside work out, right? So we have 6m squared, so we can't automatically just put m and m here. We have to kind of figure out what goes to make 6m squared. So our possibilities are, let me write this off to the side. To make 6m squared, we could have 6m times m, or we could have 2m times 3m. So there's more than one way to make the first term. It's not just a standard, okay, this is easy, we can do this. So we've got to kind of figure that out. So we have to look at the first term and we have to look at the last term. Our last term is -1. And that's easy because there's really only two possibilities, or really one possibility, right? Is 1 times -1. That's the only way to make a -1 last term. So we know that one of these is going to have to be 1, and one of these is going to have to be -1. But now we have to figure out, okay, do I want to use 6m times m here, or do I want to use 2m times 3m? And so then once you get to this point of knowing, okay, what's the first and what's the last, now we have to look at the middle terms, the inside outside. And those aren't quite as straightforward, but not too bad, right? So our inside outside, we want to end up with just a plus m. Okay. Our last term is just 1, so that kind of actually makes it easy. So now we have to look at our first term. Do you think that 6m and m kind of combining together for inside outside would make a 1m, or do you think we maybe want to look at 2m and 3m since they're closer together? Probably 2m and 3m, right? Okay, so we know we want to do 2m and 3m, but we don't know which one goes where because one has like a negative and one has like a positive. So you can kind of think about it like, okay, the outside of this is going to be negative and the inside is going to be positive. Or if you really, it's confusing to you, you can kind of just guess. Okay, so you can just say, okay, I think it's going to be 3m plus 1 times 2n plus negative 1. So let's just kind of do the guess method and see what you end up with there. So we're guessing this is what it is. So then what we want to do to check it is FOIL, right? So we're going to do 3m times, and I made that that should be an m. 3m times 2m is 6m squared. So now I'm foiling. Okay. First, 3m times 2m, 6m squared. Outside is 3m times negative 1. So that's negative 3m. Inside is 1 times 2m, so that's positive 2m. And last is 1 times negative 1, which is negative 1. So negative 3m plus positive 2m is going to give me negative m. So everything is right about this, except for up here in my original problem, I have a plus m, and I ended up with a negative m down here. So what that means is that I need to flip-flop these guys. Okay, so I really need to do 2m plus 1 m plus negative 1. And then again, to check if that's right, I'm just going to do my FOIL, right? 2m times 3m is going to give me 6m squared. Outside is 2m times negative 1 is negative 2m plus 3m minus 1. So it works out because negative 2m plus positive 3m is going to give me positive m. Hey, Olivia. Sorry, I should have sent out an email reminding people. Jake and I were just hanging out. We actually just did example number 1, but I'm going to do a lot more examples. So, okay. Another, so I was telling Jake that it's basically the same thing we've been doing, except, so we're factoring, right? Except that now we have a number out in front of our first term, so it makes it a little bit more tricky, right? So when we want to factor, we're always, basically what we're trying to do is figure out these parentheses, right? We're trying to figure out how to factor, break it apart. And usually we'll start with the first term, and it's easy because if it's just y squared, you just do y and y, and it's easy, right? But we have 4y squared, so there's actually more possibilities of what we can put in our first term. So if we have 4y squared, that could be 4y times y, or it could be 2y times 2y, right? There's more than one possibility for how we can make 4y squared. So that's our first term. Then we go to our last term, right? Our last term is negative 3. That's actually a little bit easier because the only ways to make negative 3 are either negative 1 times positive 3 or positive 1 times negative 3. So we have basically for the first and 2 choices for the second. So there's 4 ways that we can, 4 possible ways that we could combine these together. Now, what your book does, I don't know if you looked in your book at all, but they actually kind of write out this big chart. Let's see if it'll let me scroll up a little bit. And I have an example here. They say, oh, what are all the factors of the first and what are all the factors of the second? And then we'll make a chart and figure out which one works, which is fine if you're okay with like kind of that that method, that's okay. But I think that we can be a little bit smarter and not have to list every single one and kind of try to figure out, okay, what do we think is probably going to give us our inside, outside, our middle term? So what I mean by that is now we have all of these 4 possibilities, and now we kind of have, this is where, again, it's not an exact math science. You kind of have to use your intuition to kind of make an educated guess. So we want our inside, outside to be 4y, right? We have 4y times y. We have 2 and 2y. We have a 3 and a 1. And we want to end up with 4y. So does anybody have a strong feeling about, okay, maybe I want to do this number, I don't want to do this number? And I actually don't know the answer to this, so I'm kind of thinking through it too. Yeah. Okay, and if you're not really sure, it's okay. You can just kind of start with something and then say, oh, that's not working out. I have a feeling, so I know I don't want to end up with 4y times 3 because that's going to give me 12, and it's going to be really hard to turn 12 into 4y. Does that make sense? So I know I don't want this combination of 4y getting multiplied by 3. I'm pretty sure that's not going to work out for me so well. So I think I'm going to start with the 2y's and just see kind of where that gets me. So if I have 2y and 2y, right, then I have, it really actually doesn't matter which one I multiply by 1 and which one I multiply by 3 because they're both 2y. So I'm going to say, okay, 1 and 3. And then I'm just going to pick one to be, I'm going to pick the 3 to be positive and the 1 to be negative. Okay. So what you do is then you just FOIL it and say, okay, is this right? Now, honestly, when you're foiling and checking in your homework, oops, if I can spell FOIL right, you really don't have to do first and last because you already did first and last up here. Okay, I've been doing it just to kind of reinforce the idea of what FOIL is, but you don't have to do that because obviously 2y times 2y is 4y squared. And negative 1 times positive 3 is negative 3. So really what you're looking for is the outside and the inside. So let's kind of shortcut since we're going to be doing a lot of foiling here. So the outside is going to be 2y times 3. So the outside is 2y times 3, which is 6y. And the inside is going to be negative 1 times 2y, which is going to be negative 2y. And when I add 6y plus negative 2y, I actually end up with 4y. So somehow by a very, very lucky guess, the first one I did is actually the factoring of that. I didn't actually mean for that to work out because really I wanted to show you what you do if you don't get it right and then you keep going. Okay, so maybe let's do another one since I kind of accidentally picked an easy one. Is this starting to make sense to you guys? Like, are you like, what is she doing? Or is it starting to be like, oh, okay, I'm kind of seeing it. Kind of seeing it. Some more examples would be good. Okay. Let me clear this off. There we go. Okay, so let's do number Let's do number 13. So number 13, and this is in your book, it's on page 222, 222. 3p squared plus 7p minus 6. Okay, we want to factor it. That's what we're doing, right? We're factoring, factoring, factoring. So we want to get something like this. So we need to figure out, okay, the first term is 3p squared. So the way that we can make 3p squared is 3p times p, right? Is there any other way to make 3p squared? No, yep, that's pretty much it, right? Our last term is -6. So this has more possibilities. So you can make -6. It can be -1 times 6. It could be 1 times -6. We could have 2 times -3 or -2 times +3. So we have a lot of possibilities for the last, but as long as we pick one of those combinations, we're going to get a -6. Okay, so now we've got our possibilities for the first, we've got our possibilities for the last, and now we got to figure out, okay, give me 7p for my outside inside. Okay, sorry, let me just look at something real fast. Okay, good. I thought I wasn't broadcasting that for a second. Okay. So, sorry, back to this. We've got 3p times p, and we've got all these combinations for the last one. Well, we know the only combination for the first is going to be 3p times p. Okay, and we know we want to get to 7p in here. So, would we want to pick 1 and 6 and put 6 over here and 1 over here? No, because that would mean we're going to have 3p times 6, and 3 times 6 is 18. And 18 is nowhere near 7p. So we can kind of already, Yeah, so I'm leaning more towards, if you want to use 1 and 6, you probably need to at least put 6 over here, right? Because then you have 3 times 1, which is 3, and 6 times p, which is 6, and that gets you to 9. So it's, you know, it's closer, but it still seems better if we could maybe use 2 and 3. So your eraser is going to be your friend, right? So let's take off. I'm guessing 2 and 3 is probably a better bet. What do you guys think? Can you see how 1 and 6? 1 and 6 may work, but 2 and 3 seems like maybe you're going to get a little closer. My explanation making sense, kind of? Okay. So like I said, it's not always an exact science. It's kind of like a, okay. So we're thinking 2 and 3 look a little bit better. So now we need to figure out, do we put 2 here and 3 here, or 3 and 2? So we can kind of just do a little guesswork, right? Let's go back. So if we say, okay, let's try 2 and 3. 2 and 3 would make my outside 3p times 3. And, oh, one's got to be positive and negative. So maybe this way. 3p. I'm not drawing this very well. Let's actually just make a guess and see where it is. Because I feel like I'm thinking it in my head, but I'm not showing it very well for you guys. So let's pick one. Let's pick n -3. And let's just see if that works. Okay. So when we are checking our FOIL, don't necessarily have to check first and last, because this is first, right? 3p times p is always going to be 3p squared. And last should always work out. We're really checking our inside, outside. Outside, inside. So we've got 3p times negative 3. So that's going to give us negative 9p. And our inside is 2 times p, so 2p. So negative 9p plus positive 2p is negative 7p. So I don't like the fact that it's negative, but I do like the fact that it's 7p, and we're trying to get positive 7p. So what that means is that I probably have all my numbers right, but I have my signs wrong. So instead, let's try 3p minus 2. So I'm switching my signs, right? And p plus 3. Let's try flip-flopping our signs. Okay, so then I'm going to do 3p times 3, which is 3p squared. Again, you don't have to do that one because it should be right. My outside is 3p times positive 3, so 9p. My inside is negative 2 times p, which is negative 2p. And my last is negative 6. So 9p minus 2p is going to give me 7p. Plus a negative 6. Okay, so now I know this is how I factor it. Okay, exciting, right? Yeah, that's the word you were thinking of. I could tell over the phone. I could hear the excitement. All right, you want me to do it? Let's do another one, all right? Let's do number 23. I think the more that you see it, it's kind of a weird math concept, right? Because there is a mathematical way that you can do it, but it's extremely time consuming. And we are using mathematical concepts, but it's a little bit of a puzzle too, right? Like, oh, how can I fit these numbers together to make this happen? Okay, so number 23 is 2x squared plus xy minus 3y squared. Ugh, right? And we want to factor, all we're doing, all these sections, factor, factor, factor. Okay, so what do we have to do? Well, we got to look at our first term and figure out how can I make 2x squared? Well, thankfully, there's not a whole lot of ways you can make it. You can only make it by doing 2x times x. That's the only way to make 2x squared, right? Or x times 2x, but it's basically the same thing. So we know one of these is going to be 2x and one of these is going to be x. Then we got to look at our last term. Our last term is negative 3y squared. So don't be intimidated by the fact that there's an x squared and a y squared, because we know to make y squared, we just do y times y, right? So what are the ways I can make negative 3y squared? Negative 3y times positive y, or positive 3y times negative y. Those are the two ways that I can make negative 3y squared. Now I have to figure out, how do I fill this in? Does the 3y go here, or does the 3y go here? And is it positive or is it negative? And to kind of figure that out, I could sit there and I could list all of these out and FOIL every single one and figure out. That's one option. That's what your book does. Or you can look at this middle term. You want to get basically 1xy. So you're not going to want to put 3y here and 1y here, because when you FOIL, it's going to be 2x times 3y. You're going to get 6xy, and that's going to be way too big to get 1xy. So I already know that putting 3 times 2 is not a good idea, that I probably want to put my 3 over here. Okay, and the reason is then I have 2x times 1y, which is going to be 2xy, and 3y times 1x, which is going to be 3xy. And those are going to be much, much closer together. So do you get how I kind of figured out where that 3y goes? You don't want it over here. You don't want it here because you're going to end up with 6. Now, if this was 6xy, then I definitely want to put 3y over here. But it's not. It's only 1. So I don't want to put it over here. So then the last part is figuring out where my signs go. Okay. Any guesses? I want to end up with a pop. Go ahead. Minus on the left and plus on the right. All right, let's try it out. Okay. It's like Christmas colors in here. All right. When we're checking, we want to FOIL, right? If you want to take a shortcut in your homework, do you need to do F and L every time? Not necessarily, because you've already done the work here, right? This is your F and your L. You've already figured those out. So really, you're really going for your OI, right? Your outside, inside. So my outside is going to be 2x times y plus my inside, which is going to be negative 3xy. So if I add 2xy plus negative 3xy, I end up with negative xy. So that's really close, but up here it's positive, not negative. So when I do that, it's not a big deal because I'm like, oh, no big deal. I just change this to positive and I change this to negative, and then I should be good to go. And if you want to double check, this is a mess. The screen is a mess. So let's write it nicely. 2x plus 3y times x minus y. So if we really, really want to check our FOIL, we would get 2x squared. Outside would be negative 2xy plus 3xy minus 3y squared. And so you're going to end up with negative 2xy plus positive 3xy, which is just xy. So that would be how you would factor that. All right, more examples. You want to do some more? Do you guys want to try one on your own? How about that? You want to? Why don't you guys try number 1 in your homework, and then I'll do it on here. So number 1, and I'll write it up on here if you don't have your book. It's the one thing when you see it doing that, and then when you try to do it, it's like, oh. All right, so try that one out, and then we'll do it. All right, awesome. Did you say same? Sorry. All right. Okay, so we've got 3x squared, right? So the ways to make 3x squared is basically just 3x times x. So I know it's going to have to be 3x and x. And then my last term is 2, and it's plus 2, so that's awesome. So it's got to be 1 times 2. So then I have to figure out, do I put my 2 here, or do I put my 2 here? 7x. So I actually need my number to get pretty big, right? I want it to be 2 times 3 because that's going to get me to 6. So I am going to put my 3, that's not right because there's no 3 in there. I'm going to put my 2 over here and my 1 over here. And since it's all adding, that's awesome. So I'm going to check it out, see if I did it correctly. So FOIL first, we've got that taken care of. My outside is 3x times 2, which is 6x. My inside is going to be 1 times x, which is x, and that's going to give me 7x. So this is how this will work for factoring. Is that what you guys got? Okay. Cool. Nice. Okay. Do you guys want to do another example? You want to work on your own? I'm good with whatever. That's all I wanted to do today was go over 5, 9. So you're good? Let me look here. It's just 1 through 21 odd. Yep. Cool. All right. Well, if you guys end up with any questions, let me know. If not, I will see you on Monday. Thanks for coming, guys. All right.